Yeah. All right. Good morning, everyone. Brad Roltkin here with the Fresno Bitcoin and Cryptocurrency Investors Group. Today, we're talking about an article in Forbes, talked about Bitcoin and the quantum computers catching up and may causing a problem. The article was kind of hey, is this going to be a problem for BlackRock kind of thing? And I read it and I'm like, well, if it's a problem for them, it's a problem for a lot of us. So much more than just what they had pointed out. So that would kind of start the discussion there, what that might get into. And then, um, I noticed that after we hit the all-time highs again here recently with Bitcoin, the Ethereum and some of the other altcoins were nowhere near what they were at before. So is that kind of a new trend? The more people get into crypto, they just know about Bitcoin, so that keeps, going up. There's demand for that, but these other ones not as much, that kind of thing. And then maybe a little, um, is Ethereum, some of the shine coming off Ethereum, where Solana is, kind of coming up and seems to be getting more popular. So we'll kind of talk about those and any other news you guys have seen or heard or anything you want to talk about. So, um, Michael, you want to continue what we were talking about before we started the recording on the kind of the aspect that as we move along, Bitcoin becomes more and more of, the focus. It's kind of where you're going.
Yeah, I just think that uh, as with a lot of companies that come up trying to do things, now Bitcoin's not a company, but the principle is the same, and that is that the cream rises to the top, and it's been my view for quite a long time that Bitcoin will end up being or is the king of the hill. And as I was describing earlier, that way back in the browser wars back in 99, 2000, you had like, I don't know, a dozen different browsers and or portals really. And nobody knows about any of those except for Yahoo. And that's what's going to end up happening with Bitcoin. Um, Bitcoin is first to the scene. They have, what is it, 62% of the market now?
Yeah, let me pull it up and see.
That about right? And
Uh,
so, yeah, you tell me what percentage it has of the market. And I mean, the next closest competitor is Ethereum, and I mean, it's still a lot of money, but it's nowhere near what Bitcoin is.
Yeah, 63 for Bitcoin and 9.2 for Ethereum. Where I remember, I think back in, when I got started or started paying attention in 2017, um, Bitcoin was around that two-thirds mark type of thing. And they didn't even count Ethereum. It was just like Bitcoin and everybody else. And then they started on, at least on Coin Market Cap, where I'm referring to. Um, and then they added the Ethereum and it kind of grew and grew a little bit, more market share. And I think it was maybe up to 20%, 18%, something like that. And obviously there's more altcoins now, but so many of them are worthless. It's almost doesn't, we don't need to count them type of thing. But
Well,
yeah,
that's
we're
the
back to
point.
that two-thirds dominance.
Yeah, and that the more coins that you say that they come out all the time, and so that's nobody's ever going. Ethereum's the closest one, and they're six times smaller. Okay, six times smaller in terms of percentage. And I just think that people are going to be putting Bitcoin on their books. They're not going to really put other things on there unless there's a specific need that that particular coin does for that company or that organization. And I think Bitcoin is the one that everybody's going to have. I talk to different people and most people have heard of Bitcoin, but you start talking about some of these other coins, they have no idea what you're talking about. They haven't heard those. And how many years ago, Brad, did we talk about um, what's in the mind of the general public? And even then it was a struggle. I mean, I know you've been this since 2014 or something.
That's when I
2013.
opened my Coinbase account and I, didn't do much because I didn't. it's like, well, what do I do?
Yeah.
And then when I saw the altcoins and the ability to mine the altcoins in 2017, that's when I kind of jumped in, started mining, and kind of went from there because I didn't have the funds to buy the ASICs even back then, type of thing. So
Yeah, they
the
were.
mining was interesting to me. So I was just thinking while you're talking, it's almost like you said the mind of the consumer and stuff. The the thinking seems to be with these investment companies where I was thinking, back in, I don't know, in 17, 18, where it's like, okay, I'm just putting money in there and that's it. Where they're not, because they keep talking about Bitcoin versus gold. And, it's digital gold and, it's really another store of value. Maybe people are finally freaking out a little bit about the dollar and the dollar, losing its luster, so to speak. And Bitcoin is a good alternative, easier to deal with than gold or whatever there. But I never hear the ETFs or these finance people talking too much about smart contracts and the things that we can do there. Basically replace some avenues of finance with a smart contract type of thing. And so, I mean, they're just back in, what are the 8 years behind us, that kind of thing.
Yes, that's what the utilitization. Easy for me to say. That's what
That's
I
right.
was
Yeah.
talking about a little earlier. Is that people are going to find utility in it, in different coins that do different things for them, and so. But you're right. They don't talk about much of that. I mean, people bring up the blockchain as just, okay, that's a place where Bitcoin's at. And that's really when you watch TV or you listen to different things, that's really the only way they talk about it. Oh, it's on the blockchain. But most people just talk about it as an investment, and it's an alternative investment class, or not even alternative anymore. Do you hear? I don't hear the word alternative as much.
Yeah, it's accepted now. I mean, to me, once the ETFs were out there, it's just part of the finance arena, so to speak. Hey, welcome, Adrian. I just see that you jumped in. Where are you checking in from? Looks like you're unmuted. Well, jump in when you can, or use the chat room if you've got audio issues or something going on there, or something else is going on in the room where you are. But glad to have you here. Um, Yeah, there was talk about, was it a month ago, give or take, where Chase had completed a few transactions, kind of like test proof of concept, using their own internal blockchain, um, kind of thing. So at least that was interesting to hear, as far as some of the functionality or utilitarian utility of the blockchain. So we'll see. Hey, Susan, why don't you jump in and give us your thoughts here on Bitcoin, where we're at?
I don't have too many thoughts about it. I just kind of watch it. But on the blockchain, I it's Walmart uses blockchain for their logistics, moving their trucks around and deliveries, products.
I'm sorry, which company was that?
Walmart.
Walmart. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I have seen a few things, yeah, tracking. And sometimes, I don't know if it was them specifically, but talking about tracking specific like packages of meat or this, I'm like, holy cow, this is,
Yes. So like they'll expect a truck to arrive on time and it's 3 hours late. Well, now with their blockchain, they can tell that there was a traffic accident and the truck was stuck on a freeway.
yeah. And so
So
if the truck is reporting back, their GPS coordinates every 15 minutes, half an hour or whatever, and that's on the blockchain and easily um, accessed by others. I'm sure that's like a private blockchain, so to speak, but it's not just like, oh, sorry, boss. Something came up and this or that. When they were fooling around, they stopped at a bar for half an hour to watch a hockey
right,
game.
right. So that's what
It's
they
like, no, we see the truck didn't move for 30 minutes. And why were
yeah.
you so close to a bar and not the freeway?
Yeah. Yes.
kind of thing.
So I think it's the comp all many people in many areas of the company are happy with it.
Okay, interesting, interesting. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
guess tracking the food is similar to tracking a package. It seemed like they would want to know, okay, this meat came from this meat processing center.
Yes.
I know there's kind of like one in Hanford or Selma or whatever. Just I know there's more than that. But if you track that and okay, it went to Phoenix and now it's in Albuquerque, and that Vaughn's or whatever store got that meat from this place in Selma, and they picked it up 18 hours ago or whatever it is, and so they can track back if there's a problem or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, it seemed overkill at first, but I guess, it's the information age. You have information on everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, have
But
you gotten any closer to, pulling the trigger on a Bitcoin
yes, I
ETF?
did. Yes, I did. I
Excellent.
did. Yeah.
Michael, it's a reason to celebrate.
Oh my gosh, are you in the game, Susan?
In a small bit.
Congratulations.
All right.
Thank you.
Yay. That's good. People just got to get a toe in, you know?
Yes.
That's just get your toe in there, see, and the water's fine. This
Yes.
is great. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, and the amounts never we don't care about the amounts. I mean, I, I don't know and necessarily care how much, money Michael has. I hopefully has a lot, or whatever. I would rather have everybody have more than less. But like I told my friend, when the ETFs come out, I said, hey, just put 1% in, not, and whether that's 1% of 10,000 or 10 million, at least you got some exposure to Bitcoin. So that's the important thing.
Yes.
Cool,
So
cool.
it's been fun. It's funner to have exposure.
Yeah, and then you're paying attention a little more, but it sounds like you pay attention quite a bit to the, financial market. So that's
Yeah.
all good. Ahmed, what are you thinking on Bitcoin? Are you still pro, or what are your thoughts?
I really need to figure it out more. I just kind of have my portfolio sitting there, and I'm glad about the recent Bitcoin going back up. It's probably a lot of it's due to the halving, and I wonder how much faster it'll continue to grow. I feel like I should have. I totally. I was involved with some other stuff, and I totally forgot that the halving was right there. I should have bought a bunch when it was super low. But, yeah, I think like you know, with AI, I want to get more into building like a bot or something because I feel like creating bots can be more intelligent now
Okay.
because you can hook it up to a AI to add extra conditions and you can pretty much code your own bot at this point because yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of tools out there to even create your own token, kind of thing. So what would you be looking for the bot to do?
I would want it to be like interactive with me and be semi-automated
Okay.
and
And,
you know
and is it like trading for you, that kind of
yeah,
thing?
yeah, trading. I
Okay,
would give
okay.
like a budget and then see how it trades and if there's anything that it's not sure of that it can kind of ask me and seize opportunities. There's probably tools like that out already. There's probably a lot of those tools already out.
Yeah, there are trading bots, and we've talked about the Easy Bot. I've been using for a couple, I guess, yeah, a couple years now. But that's interesting, your comment about the bot would ask you, so maybe it does its thing and uses the AI and goes out and grabs other information, but maybe it's like, well, I'm not sure about this, so it prompts you to tell it, yeah, I'd use that as a signal to trade or not, or that kind. I've
Yeah,
never heard that
because there's
concept.
certain risk levels. Like every trade has a certain risk level,
Huh?
and every period of time to wait has a certain risk level. So and there's it's kind of like a chess game, So it can probably calculate those moves better than I can, but at least it can let me choose uh, which risk level to take.
Right, right. Yeah, because the risk, it might prompt you that, hey, there's a 10% chance on this and a 40% chance on this other one. And you're like, okay, let's do the 40%, kind of thing. Interesting. Okay. Well, keep us updated if you go down that path or want to discuss. That would be an interesting topic. Kind of taking the next step because we've talked
Yeah,
about the trading bots and the ones where you can kind of give it some parameters, but they're not AI. It's more just like you set up a range that you want to trade in type of thing. But that's interesting.
yeah, that seems like really. I mean, I'm sure there's controls in there to make sure it's not like. I have to review training you guys did on that. There's
Okay.
probably some controls so you don't lose all the money, right?
Right. You can have like a stop or, that kind of thing. Um, have you thought about which coins you want to trade?
Um,
Or
no,
doesn't really matter?
it seems like Bitcoin might be the best. I was thinking like the Bitcoin, the one that's Sigwit Bitcoin. I guess most people are using Sigwit Bitcoin now, where it has like the lower transaction fee because the header is more compressed.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, that way because I know Bitcoin has like huge transaction fees. Otherwise,
Yeah, and then would you trade against like USDT, on an exchange or against another token or coin?
that's a different trade entirely, right? That's a different type of trade where you're the conversion ratios ones. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, or I mean, I've seen, when way back in 17 and 18, Bitcoin was the thing that you traded against. So like, I would buy Bitcoin on Coinbase and they only supported maybe 6 or 7 coins at that time. And so then I would take the Bitcoin and go to like Binance or wherever, and they had, a couple hundred coins that they supported. So I'd go there and buy, um, Theta or whatever. But I'd have to use the Bitcoin as the currency to go between exchanges. Now, a lot of people are using USDT to trade against and use USDT to buy Theta or to buy Ethereum or whatever. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, you wouldn't want to be selling the Bitcoin directly back to cash. Yeah, that way you can avoid all the tax forms, right?
well, no, every time there's a trade, that's a tax. Um,
Even with USDT.
yes, and yes,
But if there,
yeah.
if you okay, so what if so I guess you just gotta have a non-currency related crypto you sell again.
Uh,
That way.
it's anything you trade anything. That's why these tools that are out there, the coin tracking and Zen Ledger and these kind of, I think that's the one. Yeah, they keep changing names too. But there's more every tax season that go in and we'll do an API call against the exchange to find the all your transactions and then calculate whether you traded from Bitcoin to Ethereum, then Ethereum to Litecoin. Each one of those transactions is a taxable event, but quite complicated to deal with without a tool like that. But where I was going with asking which pairs is when I started using that easy bot, my goal was to make money and, on a trade. And okay, if I can make $5 a day, putting up $300 and I can make $5 a day or something like that, hey, that's a win in my book. But then there was a couple times where the market just, ran up and I had maybe 80% of my funds in USDT. And so the market went up and my USDT didn't go up relative to the dollar. And so I kind of felt that I lost out not being fully exposed to one coin or another. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the market went up of which coin?
It was any point, but it was the point is that the market moved up and I felt that I lost out on the 80% of the funds that were sitting in USDT. Where if they were sitting in Ethereum or Solana and the market went up 5%, I would have gained 5% just by sitting on those coins.
Oh, okay.
So then what did I decide? I said, well, wait a minute. I'm trying to kind of have a long-term solution for this trading bot, just to let it run, just let it run, and that's it. I don't really look at it. So then I decided to trade. They added the functionality to use Bitcoin as like the base currency. So you could trade Bitcoin versus Ethereum, Bitcoin versus Solana, Bitcoin versus XRP, that kind of thing. And at the time, I wanted to long-term hold Bitcoin, Solana, and XRP. So I said, okay, let me trade Bitcoin against Solana, Bitcoin against XRP. Those two, I had two trading bots, one for each of those pairs. And then even if the market went up, I was still in a crypto, whether it was in Bitcoin or Solana or XRP, it didn't really matter because I had exposure to that increase in, when the market went up. But what I found is that I made a lot less money because there's less trades going on. Where normally if the market goes up and then the bot sells against USDT, then there's a profit. But if the whole market goes up, the bot doesn't necessarily sell because the market went up for all three of those coins, and there wasn't enough of a difference in price to trigger a sell, if that makes sense. So just something to think about as when you're doing, you know, setting up your bots or programming it or whatever kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe if you think that you're in an overall down market, use USDT as the second coin, and if you think the market is overall in an upward market, do a crypto for both.
Yeah, good point. So that's like the next step in the conversation. Right, right. Because even like with the trading bots are great when the market is stagnant or just sitting there, it's like nothing's really going on. Bitcoin is, 103, 102, 103, 101, just, for a week or a month or whatever kind of thing. So yeah, good point. Good point. Because and it's easy enough to trade or switch the bots on that, but good deal. Okay, I don't know, back to that article. Let's just finish off. Any other thoughts on this article? Michael, when you sound like you weren't as impressed, like I wasn't super impressed as with the headline. It's like, oh my gosh, warning from BlackRock, kind of thing.
Here's the thing about BlackRock is they are self-interested in in um, in what they're doing. So, I always kind of uh, I see this stark BlackRock warning, and I just go, okay, well, what is it that you guys have in mind that you want to do to position yourself? We're talking people who have BlackRock has somewhere in the neighborhood of 15, 16 trillion dollars under management. So, they're always pointing at something. They're always looking at something to make some sort of move and to make more money. I, it all comes back to this, is that everybody said when I started, I know you started a lot sooner than I, but it was like 2,500 in July of 2017, give or take. Oh, Bitcoin's going to crash. Bitcoin's going to do this. It's going to go away. It's going to be worth $1. And here we are at 105, almost 106 $1,000. So, some things just take on a life of their own, no matter what people in the world like to have to say. And BlackRock has tens of billions of dollars invested in this. They're not going to let it go bad. That's my thought. Although I do want to say that this thing about the quantum computing, that is something that I do think about sometimes, and that I am a little that worries me a little bit. You know, I mean, if quantum computers really come to pass in the way that regular computers are, that would be quite challenging because a 256 bit um, uh, firewall would probably not be enough. And isn't Bitcoin protected by 256?
Yeah, yeah, the SHA-256.
Yeah.
But at that point, wouldn't we just up due to, SHA-512 or,
I don't know who's going to
1024?
do that. I don't know the mechanism through which that's done.
Yeah, it's almost like we'd have to do like a fork of the Bitcoin chain to one that's more secure. And again, that's a technical things I'm not,
Yeah,
um,
that's what I'm saying.
I
I'm not
don't know
really
either.
adding.
But it seems like if we keep, if nobody knew what was going on with quantum computers and all of a sudden they just took over, you're like, whoa, crap, but just like this article is talking about, it's like, hey, this is something up and coming. Maybe we need to watch out for it. Then, maybe this is a way for BlackRock to start a quantum computer fund and make money off of that side of it, and then help secure blockchain as well or something like that, just kind
This
of
is
that
what I'm saying. Is
evil
there?
thinking like you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. They're thinking. They're thinking multiple steps down the road. I'm sure that there's rooms that they have where they have like these gigantic white walls, and they just say, okay, if this happens, these are the scenarios that go on. Because look at the stuff that we take for granted now. You know,
Hmm.
you see movies and people were still picking up phones, or they'd have those big giant. You remember the early cell phones that were like
The bricks,
literally
yeah.
like the brick. You had this thing like this,
Yep.
and now we basically carry a computer in our pockets by the billions. I mean,
Yeah.
who thought that 25 years ago?
Right. And how much power, if we had like a mesh network of all these um, phones working on things, you just go to in like a grocery store, how much computing power is in the purse or pocket of everybody in that grocery store and what they could do.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay,
It's
good
pretty
deal.
crazy.
Um, yeah, I guess that covers this one then. Any Susan, do you track any of the other coins or just Bitcoin or like the crypto market in general? Do you look at, like what's going on with Solana specifically or
No,
okay.
I don't. I'm pretty
Okay.
boring.
Yeah, no, it's okay. There's just so much going on, you can't keep up with it.
Right.
I
It's
remember when I first
information
started
overload.
getting into the DeFi stuff was when, probably a year after Ethereum was, at the forefront on there. But it was so expensive, the stupid fees, that when the Binance Smart Chain, that's when I kind of got into it, and the fees weren't too bad, and I spent a lot of time just on what was going on that specific chain, but there was dozens of other smart chains that were, legit. There's, hundreds that aren't kind of thing. So it's just a lot to keep up with. Um,
Yes. So on the quantum thing,
mm,
I've I've heard people talking that there'll be a fix that they're working on technology to alter the current blockchain or protect it somehow.
right. And it seems, I mean, that just seems like a normal progression.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
I think the easiest fix would just to have a fork. Maybe preventatively they could have it before it gets hacked, but have a fork where there's like a multi-factor authentication before you can restore your wallet.
okay. Yeah. Whatever technology or process we need to add could be added. And just, I mean, the blockchain's out there to say, okay, midnight Eastern time on July 1st, we're switching over to this. It's going to be a 2-hour downtime while it switches, and then everything will be back up. Just like when Wells Fargo updates network or whatever, kind of thing. So yeah. So that the two-factor authentication you're talking about, like at the blockchain level?
Yeah, like it kind of like, I don't know if you use Authenticator or any sort of
Yeah.
two-factor app on your phone, but yeah, at the blockchain level, it could be tied to a specific uh, two-factor um, generation, and before you can actually restore the wallet, it makes sure that you type in that 4-digit code, whatever you have on your phone.
Authenticator, yeah. Because right now that's done at the wallet level.
No, right now it's not done at all. Right now, you have like that 16-word phrase, and anyone could brute force try to restore a wallet using.
Right, using the 12 word. But we're using, so like if I use well, maybe it's more the exchange. Yeah, so even the wallets don't have it. Like you have like Exodus on the computer, or it'll have a password, so somebody that stumbles across your computer can't just go on and, get into your Exodus
Yeah,
wallet,
the wallets have that, but the actual
the actual chain.
yeah.
Huh. Because that would have to be like a smart contract type of thing to generate interest. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And then who would decide which authenticator would get used? Because
You know,
Microsoft has one now, and I have to deal with that with my Outlook 365 account, and it's kind of annoying, but
yeah, a lot of the authenticators are pretty generic. You can use whichever one. You just scan the QR code into whichever one you're using.
okay.
I use Google's, and uh, yeah, some people use Microsoft. You just scan the QR code in whichever app you're using, and
Okay. I wasn't sure how much they, under the hood, how much difference there was between them, but okay. Yeah, that might be an interesting experiment to try, because normally you tell it, okay, I'm using Authenticator, or I'm using this other one, or whatever, but interesting thought. Okay, cool.
surprised it hasn't been a problem yet. Like, what specifically, technically, are they saying? Is because I'm pretty sure people are trying to brute force hack by all day right now, like constantly,
Hmm.
by restoring different, uh, trying to restore Bitcoin wallets and seeing if there's any money to it, using just random words. So it's only a matter of time before they do it, right?
Yeah, yeah. The Eric was talking about, I think, at our last pizza meeting, how there's some people out there that there's like a website, and they'll put out, okay, here's a wallet, and here they'll like have a little story about it, and supposedly in the story are clues to get the 12-word seed phrase for that wallet. And it's kind of like a competition, but like a hackathon type of thing. And so he set up, a few different tools to run to try to brute force the 12-word, for one of these particular wallets. But it was amazing, he's like, well, based on this, this, and this, there's this many possibilities, and it was fascinating. But there's people that are doing that for fun, and I'm like, who's putting up this money in the wallet to do? And they're just crypto enthusiasts that want to kind of move the ball forward for all of us. So that's kind of cool.
Actually, yeah, I just typed it into AI, that uh, the most powerful supercomputer in the world, it can perform 1.194 exaflops, which is 1.194 times 10 to the 18 operations per second. And so so if each so it's basically 1 times 10 to the 18, right? So that many zeros
That's a lot.
per second. Even if you have a computer that can do that many per second, it would still take an astronomical number of time, billions of years. Wow,
Oh,
I guess
wow.
the words are really random then. Okay.
Yeah. So if they're, well, like I think on a lot of some of the, at least some of the chains, there's only like 250 words that they use. They're not, they're not using every word. They, there's just certain words, but even knowing the 250, 300 words that they use, getting them in the right combination with 12 of them is still quite challenging. But I think what on that website, the little story or blurb about it was supposed to give you clues to which words to use or something. That was fascinating. But yeah, and I don't, Eric doesn't have a quantum computer in his closet or anything like that. So, but it sounded like it was a kind of a fun experiment to kind of mess around with. Very cool. Oh, we've got somebody else. G Gallon, welcome. How are you doing today?
Excellent. How are you?
Good, good. Where are you checking in from?
I'm in the East Bay.
Oh, okay. Glad to have you. Any thoughts on these quantum computers and messing up Bitcoin for all of us, or anything in that front?
Well, I was a little bit late. I was a little bit late to the conversation. I've heard a little bit about it, but not a whole lot. So, I was kind of hoping to, I guess, learn a bit more.
Yeah, it sounds like we're still years away, but maybe the progression of the computers are at a great, they're progressing faster than we thought they would, type of thing. But, then we just talked about how, okay, well, then let's upgrade the blockchain. If it's like, when crooks get smarter, then, we build better locks or better doorknobs on our doors, or, more gizmos on our cars to prevent break-ins, or, that kind of thing. We don't just sit there and go, oh, you figure out how to steal my car. Okay. We're going to put something else on there to try to not let them steal the car.
Yeah, it seems to be like the nature of cybersecurity in general.
Right, right, right. Yeah, it's just that, like the military, one side gets better jets, and the other side gets better missiles to shoot down those jets, and back and forth or whatever. Okay. Any thoughts on the altcoins not moving up as much as Bitcoin in this latest time we hit a new all-time high? A reason why, or something to worry about or care about, or maybe we move more of our portfolio towards Bitcoin if this kind of keeps happening. I don't know.
Again, I go back to what I was saying earlier. I just think Bitcoin is going to be the dominant coin. Um, it's going to be ubiquitous. Like Kleenex.
Right,
Obviously that
right,
was the brand, but now everybody says, "Oh, I need a Kleenex," and it doesn't. Just has to be a tissue, and people
right,
still call it that. And
right.
I just
Well,
think that's
yeah,
what's
and
going to happen.
the public, they don't really know what cryptocurrency is, but they know Bitcoin. Just, yeah, same way. Now, so what does that mean for how much Bitcoin we should have in our portfolios? Are we talking 99%, 80%? What do you think, Michael?
Well, it really depends upon your risk tolerance. And I see these people talk about having 1, 2, 3% of Bitcoin in your portfolio. And I keep thinking that is such a low amount. Um, I mean, maybe 1 or 2 or 3% to start, but you got to add at least the same amount each year, at least. Because, I mean, just look at the history of it. And I know that, future performance isn't indicative of past performance, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know, look what it's done. And so, personally, I probably have 35, 40% of my portfolio, maybe, is in
Okay.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking just of your cryptocurrency portfolio, type of thing. But
Oh, of my 97% Bitcoin.
okay, okay. And we had a meeting on this a few months back where we kind of shared our, not the total amount, but the breakdown, kind of thing. And I had, when I do crypto coaching on the side. I try not to give financial advice, but just now I'll tell people, look, don't fall for these small coins and get all excited, because a lot of them, that's their first exposure, because they'll have a friend say, oh, I found this new coins come out and this, and they'll put $1,000 into it. Well, that $1,000 is 100% of their cryptocurrency exposure, which just that's I've learned myself that's dangerous kind of thing. But my friend that got into the Bitcoin ETFs, I don't know how much, percentage wise he did or whatever, but I said, look, put 1% in, and then when that 1% becomes 3% of your overall portfolio, then you'll be happy, kind of thing. And I think it just about did that, because it was in the wasn't it around 37 or something like that when the ETFs came out? And then, we hit over 100. So something in that ballpark. Um, okay. Um, so yeah, Michael, you're so skewed almost 100% on Bitcoin. You're not a good person to ask about the other ones.
No,
But
no, I'm not. And like I said, I am definitely skewed to that time when, watching all the wars with the portals, Yahoo thing that I've
yeah,
mentioned
yeah,
a number of times, is that I saw that and lived that over a couple of years, and I learned that lesson. I mean, that's exactly what's happening here. I mean, how many thousands of coins that are out there now will be irrelevant or even gone in the next 5 years, next year, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
Bitcoin just gets more and more attention. And, when you have one of your 73-year-old pastors at your church asking you about Bitcoin and nothing else, that just tells me something. And then he ends up buying it for his grandkids. So I don't know. It just tells me that's where I need to be. And that's where I
Absolutely.
am.
But like I said earlier, they're just, they're where we were 7, 8 years ago, just talking about the functionality for them is a store of value. They're not into the smart contracts and that kind of thing. So I think it's not quite going to be that same Yahoo analogy, because there's going to be other ones doing other functions. Now, Bitcoin probably will be the king of store of value, but maybe um, I don't have a good analogy on this one, but maybe Solana becomes the chain, instead of Ethereum or whatever. And so people are using that all the time, um, to buy a tank of gas, buy their Starbucks, whatever those daily transactions.
Here's the point I'm kind of making here is that some of these other utilities that used to be out there, these other things, they're in the background. You don't see them anymore. Even InfoSeek is still, it's not, you can't go to infoseek.com per se, but it may still be. So there's the functionality of it behind the scenes that nobody really sees, that they understand because you're using it for a technical purpose, right? But then there's Bitcoin, the big monster that everybody sees and everybody knows and everybody invests in. And you're right, maybe it's just a store of value that increases, right? We own shares in Nvidia or Apple or whatever. We don't really own that. We buy that for the specific purpose of buying it at 100, and then it goes to 150. People in the average person is going to buy Bitcoin because it's 100,000 now, and they think in 5 years it's going to be $1 million or whatever dollar amount. People use Solana, ETH as a way to do the contracts, as a way to do. Somebody said something about Walmart is using
Mhm.
it now. Well, all of that's going to be used behind the scenes, and the average person is not going to have any clue about that. And that's not going to really drive prices on anything. That's a useful utility. So you have people who invest and for the long haul, like me, and then you have other people who are technical, like a Elon Musk kind of guy, or a tech person who would
Mhm.
use it for reasons that are utilitarian. And I think that's the difference. You don't really have much in between.
Yeah, that's a good point. So maybe maybe that's like the silver that is used, to make solar panels and is used in our cell phones and that kind of thing. So the price, can go up, if there's more demand for solar panels and cell phones and that kind of thing, but it's not what people focus on like gold. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, like I
Ahmed, do
said,
you have any thoughts? It sounds like you're a little more into other coins, the whole Ethereum, Solana. Any thought there, or even Cardano or one of these other ones?
No, I haven't really been trading any other coins. I have a stash of Pirate Chain and uh, you know, about it. Back when I was curious about um, uh, zero knowledge proof tokens that you know that where they don't constantly which has a limited supply. Yeah, that Pirate Chain went down a lot and it hasn't really gone back up.
Yeah, yeah, and I've got kind of burned on these ones where it's a good idea, and then it, it petered out or something happened, and we read these white papers, or we should read these white papers. Or we look at the sites talking about what they're going to do, but there's another 50 coins doing the same thing. And why is one going to succeed and the other 49 fail? I don't
And I think
know.
with the layer two, a lot of those other altcoins have kind of been uh, redundant.
So you layer two on Bitcoin?
Yeah, with layer two on Bitcoin or Ethereum, you can have privacy based on that, I believe. It's not like true privacy. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, private chain, and there's a few like quote unquote privacy coins where the ledger is not public or it's totally untraceable,
Mm-hmm.
and that would ultimately help if everyone was to ideally be on those kind of coins, then the government wouldn't even be able to track and trace you. The IRS wouldn't be able to tax you. So
Right. Yeah, it'd still be on us to report or whatever, but yeah. Well, it looks like we're maybe going the way that we're not, if they're used as currencies, yeah, that's a whole nother discussion. But what I'm surprised on, you mentioned the layer two on Bitcoin, I saw some functionality on the Lightning Network there, geez, 5, 6 years ago, and I mean, it was transactions were as quick as a Visa authorization, at a terminal at Target or something like that. And I'm like, man, if this, because at the time the talk was, okay, Bitcoin is a store of value, but what's going to be the chain for everyday transactions? And Litecoin is the silver to Bitcoin gold and blah blah. And it's like I've been waiting forever for Litecoin to do something, and it seems, not to be doing much that I see. Um, but when I saw that on the Lightning Network on Bitcoin, I'm like, well, like you said, a bunch of these other coins are done because you can do all this with Bitcoin, and people don't know. Oh, it's the Lightning Network and Lightning nodes and how it works. It just they put $100 in Bitcoin in their wallet, and they can swipe their phone and use that money to get a Starbucks or whatever. And so I'm surprised that it hasn't. Um, move forward and I mean it seems like it's something we could be using today. I don't get why that hasn't advanced other than people want to sit on Bitcoin and don't want to use it for daily transactions because they see it go up so much. They're like, well, I don't want to use this to spend, which I get, but you can maybe you just convert part of your paycheck, and whether you buy that $5 cup of coffee with a $5 bill or $5 in Bitcoin that came from that same paycheck, what difference does it make? So I don't know. Mr. Gallen, any thoughts there on the different coins? I don't know which ones you follow or if you're an enthusiast of one chain or another.
So actually, I was for a while I was doing some swing trades on near, and yeah, I mean, something like that was actually it was quite successful for me. Um, But something piqued my interest when you mentioned those privacy coins, and actually I had to go back into my searches, and it reminded me of a coin that I searched was XMR. And yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's pretty spot on with all the privacy features on that one. So it's, I'm glad to hear that's still, at least somewhat relevant in that regard.
Yeah, that's the only one of the privacy coins that I have a profit on in my portfolio.
Is this the one? Is X Empire? Is that?
XMR, Monero.
Yeah, Monero.
Oh, Monero. Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, they've been around forever, and they used to be like a top 10 coin. And it seems like this has happened a lot where it's not, they haven't done anything bad. It's just that other coins have, kind of moved past them, so to speak. Because what are they now? Yeah. Oh, number 23. That's not too bad. So, yeah. Okay. Um, cool. Cool. All right. Any other thoughts or what you guys are looking at following or waiting for crypto to do next, other than go up?
Well, I kind of got the impression that this last dip, it was I guess I just learned it's what's known as a stop hunt, where maybe some of the whales are trying to kind of activate some stop losses. Um, and that's it was supposed to be from the analytics that I've seen, it's supposed to be, I guess, a part of a larger head and shoulders pattern. So at this point, I feel like we're kind of expecting, or at least I'm kind of expecting, a more significant dip.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about that where I mean, I know I thought once we hit that ETF, whole thing, what, a year and a half ago, that we would just kind of see it just steadily increase. And so to go down, let's look at, this is a little too much. So like back here, once we hit the all-time high here, then to go back down this much was kind of surprising. But then people are talking about, well, maybe some of these whales are trying to accumulate at a low, at 80,000 so they can get that run up again. So just like stocks get manipulated, these get manipulated as well. So yeah, if we can guess right or use enough information, we can make out like a bandit. Because I mean, just buying it at 80 and going up to 100, that's a nice little move right there. Yeah, fascinating chart. Um, okay. Anything else you guys want to throw in or topics you want to talk about in the future? I know we kind of talk about the um, tax software reporting tools around tax time. We've talked about trading bots recently. I don't know, anything else seems like some of these we try to revisit once a year just because things have changed. I know we talk about centralized exchanges recently because some of those have gone out, some of them gotten a little better, that kind of thing. But any other topics you guys can think of to put on the agenda for the future? All
I
right.
kind of count on you to do that, Brad.
Yeah.
But I hear you. You've been
Yeah.
covering a lot of topics over the last few years. So
Yeah, I
it's
just want to make sure if there's something, you guys are interested in or ran across that I missed that, we talk about it kind of thing. I know that we tried to have that guy on about creating your own token and seeing that process. And I haven't been able to get a hold of him since the last time. And so I would still like to, that seemed like an interesting topic. It's not something that we're all going to do, but maybe it's kind of interesting to see how these things work a little. It's kind of like looking under the hood of your car. You're not going to make your own car, but hey, if we know how they work a little bit, maybe that's a little more interesting, at least to us crypto enthusiasts, not the BlackRock client type of thing, but might be interesting for us. So we'll keep working on that topic. But if you have anything else, feel free to shoot me an email and share on that. So our next pizza meeting with the Father's Day going on. I know I scheduled on Father's Day one year and that was a bad idea. So our next pizza meeting isn't until like the 29th, so a few weeks from now, and then we will continue from there. So if you guys are in the Fresno Clovis area, feel free to, come out and join us, even if it's just for a few minutes or half an hour or whatever. It's a real casual thing, just chatting among crypto enthusiasts. So with that, I will hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right, take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.